This is a video tutorial for Avaris sweater. I will give you different options on the trim. This is the original one, just garter stitch, and this is the very late one, 4x4 rib. This sweater is so versatile. We do build the curve here at the neckline, and it will be 2.5 inches deeper than the back. We work the shoulder drop at the back, so there's no extra bulk at the back. These sweaters are completely unisex. They're great fit. They can be easily adjusted to fit your width, and the sleeves could be elongated. Short and slightly different issue, but yes, you can do that by casting on less stitches. I will teach you how to create a neckline seam and the decorative seam. So I have a seam right here, pretty sturdy. It gives it a lot of structure. I will teach you how to make seams at the sleeves, so the sleeves are not just stretching out and hanging on you. This part is stretchy, this part is not. I will teach you how to do a 3-needle bind off right here. That's how we connect the sleeve. This is seamless sweater. We work it in around, then flat for this part, and then back in around for the body. This is the very last test. This is the Helisvag, absolutely beautiful yarn, cropped sweater. And then this one is the first version, longer version. So it's up to you how long you want to make it, actually. It's so versatile and I absolutely love the fit. We built the shoulder drop here. All of the shape for the sleeves is done at the top, leaving nothing at the bottom. This is just straight to the underarm where it's joined to the body. And then we are making the curve for the shoulder, and then a little curve here to remove the extra fabric at the underarm. This is perfect unisex sweater. Just choose a larger size for a man, and just go with the size of the bust plus 4 inches. That's what it is. That's what pattern calls for. It's 4 inches of ease for the circumference. Choose your size that way, and then if you need a little longer sleeve, just create a longer sleeve trim. You can work 2x2 rib, that's okay, that's designed like that. It will be in a pattern. I will write it up for 2x2 or 4x4, and then I will give you an option to either have a garter stitch at the very end or 4x4 rib at the bottom trim. So watch the video, get the pattern. It's on Ravelry, the link is below, and let me know what you think about it. Hi, my name is Lena and I'm Pearls Knitting. This is a tutorial for Avaris sweater, and we will start with the collar. I use the long tail cast on, and I start with just wrapping the yarn around the needle. You can watch my tutorial on how to invisibly join or how to create a perfect join for knitting in around. I will show you here in very short how to do that. First, wrap the yarn around the needle and start casting on. You need to cast on the amount of stitches identified in a pattern plus 1. I do not change the pattern for this method. I just tell you how many stitches to cast on there. For your own awareness, you need to cast on plus 1 stitch. I have casted on the required amount of stitches and I'm ready to join. For this, transfer the first stitch off of the right needle onto the left. Keep the end of the yarn and the working yarn at the back. And then the second stitch at this point on the left needle, counting from the tip of the needle, slip it over the first, creating that join, just like here and here and here. And then slip this stitch back onto the right needle. This is the first step. Now, keeping the yarns at the back. This is your working yarn. This is the little end. Make sure that the end is wrapped over or is like sitting over the working yarn, and place your stitch marker and start working it around. You have to work for 1 inch straight in stockinette stitch. I am knitting all of the rounds for 1 inch straight. So this is what I've created. This is that seamless, perfect join. I'm getting ready to create a neckline seam. This is the join. It's practically invisible right there. I worked 1 inch in stockinette stitch. I worked about 2 inches in 2x2 rib. You can modify it, make it shorter, make it a little longer. According to the pattern, it's 2.5 inches. That's what it's designed to be, but you can adjust it to any length that you want. What we're going to do right now is I will need the larger size needle for this. Let me start at the beginning of the round. What we're going to do is remove the stitch marker. We're not going to need it for 2 rounds. With a larger size needle, whatever it is that will give you the right gauge, knit 1 round. We're doing it because the stitches that are created in this round, we'll be inserting the needle into these stitches and creating the new one. The next round will be the bind off. So these stitches that will be right under the bind off, those will be the base for the seam. Almost at the end of the round. I'm putting away the smaller needles, smaller size needles. And on this round, I will bind off all of the stitches. There will be 1 stitch left, so you will see per instructions in the pattern that you will decrease almost all of the stitches but 1. So, for example, if you had 112 stitches cast on and knit, it will mean that you will bind off 111 stitches because you will end up with 1 stitch at the very end. At this point, try it on. See that your head fits through this opening. If it doesn't, undo the bind off. Take 2 to 3 sized larger needles than these that you worked with, and do the same thing. So to undo the bind off, you can just do it this way. Just tick it back. And if you're okay, if the head fits through, everything is great, then start working on the next round. The next round, you will be casting on stitches. If you originally had 112 stitches, for example, you have this 1 stitch, you will be casting on 111 stitches, the same amount of stitches that you just bound off. What you do now, you slip this stitch from the right needle onto the left needle, and it'll be behind the work. With the right needle, insert the needle into the stitch below the bind off. It will be this one right there. Grab this stitch, pull it from, slip it from the left needle and pull it through to the front, from the back to the front. This is your first stitch. Then every consecutive stitch, insert the tip of the right needle into the stitch right below the bind off, grab the working yarn, bring it to the front. Next stitch, insert the needle into the stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through. Insert it into the stitch below the bind off, grab the yarn and pull it through. Keep working in the same manner until you get to the very last stitch. It's kind of tight there, so this stitch is hiding. I will show you how to find it. If you find it difficult to find that stitch, when you have one stitch here, this is just a little tip, it's not in a pattern. What you need to do is knit it. That will create just enough fabric, just enough length to not hide this stitch completely. And then, well, let's pull it through again. And then start casting on. Let me hold this. Otherwise it creates a noise in the video, and I don't want to do that. So I'll hold that tip. Okay. Keep inserting the needle into every stitch under the bind off, creating a stitch or casting on stitches. And I'll show you when I'll come back what to do here. So right now we can see that when you knit that very last stitch from the bind off, this part is not as tight, and you can see this very last stitch that you will be casting on. It's easier to get through. I'm finishing the round number 3 where I cast on bound off stitches. And I like how this looks. So I'm going to make a note in the pattern to knit the last stitch of the bind off, because it's very easy to get to the stitch. If I wouldn't have, it would have been hidden and it's very hard to get to it. So the number of stitches I bound off, cast on. I created a seam, goes all the way around, and it will hold that neckline. It will give it good structure. The end of round 3. Place the stitch marker, this is round 4, and knit all of the stitches of this round. I just worked one round, round number 4, and I knit all of the stitches of this round. Round number 5. Slip the stitch marker, slip the first stitch purlwise from left needle onto the right needle with the yarn at the back of the work. Pick up the stitch below just slipped stitch, that purl little bump. You can just do it this way. And purl it. Repeat this to the end of the row. Insert the needle purlwise into the stitch, the right needle, slip it. The yarn is at the back of the work. Insert the left needle into the stitch below just slip stitch, purl it, insert the tip of the right needle into the stitch on the left needle purlwise with the yarn at the back. Insert the left needle tip into the stitch below just slip stitch, purl it. Repeat that until the end of the round. You will have double amount of stitches on your needles. I'm at the end of round 5, increasing stitches. Round 6, slip stitch marker. And on this round, knit the first stitch with the yarn in front, slip the second stitch purlwise, bring the yarn back, knit the stitch, bring the yarn to the front, slip the second stitch purlwise, bring the yarn to the back, knit the stitch, bring the yarn to the front, slip stitch. Repeat this motion to the end of the round. Almost at the end of the round 6. Slip stitch marker, round number 7. We will be slipping the first stitch purlwise with the yarn in the back, bringing the yarn to the front, and purling the second stitch. Slip the first stitch, purl, slip the first stitch, purl the second. Keep doing that to the end of the round. And then we will repeat round 6 and 7 one more time. I have completed all of the repeats of round number 6 and 7, created a little bump, and now for the last round, round number 8, and we'll be done with the neckline work. I will purl 2 together. You can knit 2 together or purl 2 together depending on the finish that you want for the last round. So slip the stitch marker, purl 2 together. It's okay that the stitches are twisted slightly, it's not going to affect anything. Purl 2 together. And you will do that to the end of the round. I'm ready to separate the front neckline stitches from the back neckline stitches. I just created the seam. Let me remove the stitch marker. We don't need it for now. So this is the seam that creates structure. The next couple of rounds are just decorative seam. What we need to do now, and what you need at this point, is 2 sets of needles with long cables. 47 to 60 inches is what I would recommend. Larger size needles. You will need 2 stitch markers. So this one I'm just going to put aside for now. And 2 stoppers possibly, if you want to follow what I do. I have a blue cable and a red cable to show you the front neckline stitches and the back neckline stitches. The front neckline stitches, this part will be more stitches, it will be longer because we're shaping the front curve of the neckline. The back neckline stitches will be less. Follow your instructions for your size. It's in the pattern. Check the pattern. I'm at the beginning of the round. From after I transfer the stitches, we will be working flat, and I will get ready to cast on stitches for the right sleeve. This row, what you need to do is you need to knit, check the pattern, how many stitches you need to transfer to the first longer cable needle. For my size, it's 76. So just knit 76 stitches or whatever it is for your size and transfer them to the first needle, aka the front needle, first needle. It'll be the front needle identified in the pattern. So that's the front neckline. I transferred the front stitches, whatever it is for my size, onto the longer cable front needle. I could leave these stitches for the back on the shorter cable, but I will need the longer cable anyway. So take this second needle with the longer cable, there it is, and transfer the rest of the stitches from the needle that you worked the neckline with onto the longer cable needle. So my second needle, and I will knit the rest of the stitches of this round. It will be less stitches than for the front neckline. And I will free the needle that I worked with the neckline, this one, and I'll set it aside. I won't need it anymore. So I'm gonna keep working, knitting every stitch until I'm done with this round. I transferred the front neckline stitches onto the first longer cable needle and the back neckline stitches onto the second longer cable needle. And I am ready to start working on the right sleeve. For this, you will need 2 stitch markers, and you will place them on each of the needles where the working yarn is, right there. That's your right side. That's the right sleeve that we'll start working with. For a period of time, I will not need the needle tip here at the back because the stitches are going to be there on hold. So what I will do is I will remove the tip and I will place the stopper to keep the stitches from sliding. This cable is not as long as this one, it's just 40 inches. So if I will want to try the sweater on, my stitches might slip from the needle tips. I will do that to the other tip on the same cable. And I'll place the stopper here too. There we go. So this is how you know this is the back. And for the provisional cast on, you really don't need a tip. What you do right now is you have to have the front needle at the top. So turn the collar to the wrong side. So this needle will be at the top, the front neckline needle. The back cable without the needle or with needle will be at the bottom. Your yarn, your working yarn is going to be at the bottom. It's coming from the neck, from the back of the neckline to the front. And the first stitch will be wrapped around the tip of the needle of the front neckline needle. Let me slide it over. My stitch markers are here. These stitch markers identify where the neckline seam connects with the sleeve. and they're important. Keep them there for, you will keep them there for a while to let you know where you're at. What you do right now is, I have a provisional cast on video. I will link it down below. You can check it out. This will be a short version, a repeat of it. So your working needle or front needle, back neckline cable, and the yarn. The yarn will be underneath the back neckline cable. What you do is you're going to bring the tip of the needle in front of the cable, grab the yarn, bring it to the top, and then now we created the first stitch here. The second stitch will be created on the cable, and the last stitch that you will need to cast on will be on the cable itself. It will be wrapped around the cable, and then we'll turn work and we'll start knitting. From this point, we'll be working flat. And check your pattern, how many stitches you need to cast on for the sleeve. This is the top of the sleeve. I will tell you in the pattern how many total stitches you need to cast on. Let's say you need to cast on 200 stitches. That's the pattern tells you to do. It means that for the right side or front side of the sleeve, you will have 100 stitches, and for the back side of the sleeve, you will have 100 stitches. So 200 stitches total, 100 on one needle, 100 on the other. That's what it is. Check your pattern. So stitch number 1, cast on. What you do next is you take the tip of the needle, you bring it behind the cable, you grab the yarn from the bottom and you bring it up, and you keep working like that. Bring the tip of the needle in front of the cable, grab the yarn, bring it to the top. And that's the provisional cast on using 2 cables, 2 needles, whatever you prefer. The cable will let me keep the live stitches and transition will be seamless. All right, so I'm gonna keep going and casting on my stitches, and then I will turn my work and start working flat. Cast the stitches on loosely. Don't create really tight stitches because you won't be able to slide them through the needle on the next row, and it will be difficult for you to knit that first row. I have provisionally cast on the required amount of stitches for the right sleeve. I am about to turn work. And as I said, this last stitch, it will be wrapped around the cable. So turning work, what we will do now is I will be working with a front neckline needle. So this is the other end of it. What I'm gonna do right now, this top part of the sleeve will be worked in reverse stockinette stitch. This is the right side of the work. I will be purling the first. It will be performed in 2 rows. First row I'll be purling, second row I will be knitting to create the reverse stockinette stitch for the top part of the sleeve. What's going to happen at this stitch marker is for a certain amount of stitches, and it is identified in your pattern for your size, just check it, we will be working flat. What it means is that once we purl this row, we will perform a little maneuver to decrease 1 stitch. So this part will be flat. We will be connecting the sleeve to the neckline, and it should look flat. There is no curve yet. We're just working flat. For my size, check it in your pattern, but I give you little tips in the pattern. You need a removable stitch marker. Any marker will do. And we will be turning a certain amount of rows. For my size, it's 14 stitches that I need to work flat at the neckline. It means that I will have 14 turns, 28 rows back and forth. So if I will count from here 14 stitches, 4, 5, 5, I will place this supporting stitch marker right here. Once this stitch marker, because we will be moving this stitch marker as we go, once this stitch marker meets that, that's where I know I am done working flat, without increases, decreases, without short rows. with decreases, sorry, to create this flat part, but we're not shaping the curve yet. So this is going to be just straight back and forth, and connecting the stitches here. I will show you what I mean in a second if that's not clear. So first row I will purl all of the stitches. To the stitch marker, and then I will show you what to do. For a few rows, I will be showing you how to connect the sleeve to the neckline. So right now I'm just purling. This is a continental purl, the faster method, tighter stitches. And the last one before the stitch marker. This stitch marker will stay put here. This stitch marker, what I'm gonna do is bring the yarn to the back of the work. Remove the stitch marker, slip this first stitch of the left needle onto the right purlwise, place the stitch marker back onto the left needle, and bring the yarn to the front. That's the end of the first row, and you will be repeating that row your number of times until you meet this stitch marker here. There's another instruction for the very last turn. I will show you how to create a seam, so that will be unique, but you will be repeating it for all of these stitches. Turn work. You're on the wrong side now. This is row number 2. The first thing that you need to do is knit 2 stitches together. So the stitch that you just slipped from the neckline and the first stitch of the cast on stitches for the sleeve, knit 2 together. Tighten it up a bit, and that creates that first secure join of top of the sleeve to the neckline. And then knit every stitch to the end of the row. I'm continuing work on the flat part of the right sleeve. Wrong side, right side. I'm almost my stitch markers I'm 2 stitches away from the end of the flat part, and I will show you one more time how to turn and work 2 stitches together. Remove the stitch marker, bring the yarn to the back, slip the first stitch of the left needle onto the right, bring the yarn forward, place the stitch marker back on the left needle, turn work. Knit 2 stitches together. This is row number 2. And knit to the end of the row. I'm at my last turn. Yarn at the back, remove the stitch marker, slip the first stitch of the left needle onto the right, bring the yarn to the front, remove this stitch marker, place back the stitch marker that identifies the separation between neckline and the sleeve, turn work. This is the last repeat of row number 2. Knit 2 together, tighten it up, and knit to the end of the row. And then we will follow directions for row number 3 and 4 to create the seam. I have the top of the sleeve, of the right sleeve, ready to go. The only 2 rounds left would be the bind off round and the cast on row. We will create an intentional seam along the front part of the right sleeve, right here, to give it some structure. Right now it's pretty stretchy, and you will see how the seam will hold the fabric better. So for this, Start working row number 3. Check in your pattern for instructions on how many stitches to bind off. You will be binding off stitches knitwise, so and just keep going like that. Row number 3 for the seam, bind off stitches to the stitch marker, this stitch marker. Then slip the stitch marker and wrap the last stitch from the bind off over this stitch, the first stitch of the neckline. I will show you how to do that. Start binding off stitches. Check the pattern for the number of stitches to bind off. It will tell you. Bind off stitches purlwise. And keep going like that to the end of, to the stitch marker, not to the end of the row, to the stitch marker that separates the sleeve from the neckline. There. And I will keep going like that to this stitch marker. I will return back in a second. I'm finishing binding off stitches for the row number 3. And you should end up with 1 stitch left before the stitch marker. Remove the stitch marker. Slip this stitch onto the left needle and slip the first stitch over the second stitch. Place the stitch from the, slip the stitch from the right needle onto the left needle. Now we need to cast on stitches. Turn work. This is the beginning of row number 3. I will hold this needle, otherwise it will create the noise in the video that we don't want. Place the stitch marker back on the right needle and let's start casting on. First, insert the right needle from the back of the work to the front into the stitch under the bind off. So you can see this is the first stitch, second stitch, third stitch, fourth stitch. Every stitch under it will be where we'll be picking up stitches. The yarn should be at the front of your work. We will be inserting the needle into the stitch below the bind off. Right here, that's the first stitch. Grab the yarn, create a purl stitch. Here, let's do it this way. And bring the yarn to the back, creating a stitch. Work in this manner for the rest of the row. You should have the same amount of stitches you bound off. Next stitch. Right there, under the bind off. Grab the yarn. For some, it might be better to use the hook here, a crochet hook, just to grab the yarn and bring it to the back. I will offer you a couple of options how to do it easier, because it's pretty difficult to do it this way. So if you were to continue, you will be inserting the needle from the back to the front, wrapping the yarn around the needle and bringing it to the back. It's okay, but it's a little challenging. So turn your work so the right needle becomes left needle. You will be obviously working in reverse. And insert the needle at this point from the front to the back, wrap the yarn around the needle and bring it to the front. That's an option if you want to try it, but I believe it will be easier just to do it with the hook. So insert the hook from the front to the back, grab the yarn, bring it to the front, place it on a needle. It's not in a pattern. I'm not going to write it up. It's just an additional tip in the video itself. So again, place it on the needle. Insert the crochet hook into the next stitch under the bind off. Grab the yarn, bring it to the front, place the stitch on the needle. Faster, better, so much better. Okay, keep going like that until the end of the round. I finished the row number 4, and now I'm ready to start shaping the front part of the right sleeve, the shoulder part and the sleeve part. It will be curved to reduce the fabric at the bottom of the sleeve, and then we will, at the same time, we will start shaping the front part of the right side of the neckline, front neckline, and then we'll switch to work on the left side. So for now, we'll just be sticking here, creating very short rows, shaping it from the stitch marker, going back and forth until we're done with the neckline, and then we'll switch to work on the left side. So there's a little bit of prep work that I would suggest you do. Get stitch markers. I have coconut stitch markers. Removable ones will work well here, unless you do this ahead of time while you're casting on stitches. You need to follow your instructions for the short rows. For the neckline, for my size, they're at the very end of the pattern. They're very generic because they're the same for the right side, for the left side, for the right sleeve, for the back and front of the sleeve. So they're identical. Just learn that motion and you will be okay, as long as you will figure it out. Watch this video, it will help you. It will guide you through. So what I need right now is, for my size, I need 16 stitches at the front neckline to shape it. So what I will do is I will place the stitch marker 16 stitches away from this stitch marker that separates the neckline from the sleeve. And then this is basically my guidelines. You can use different color stitch markers, the same stitch markers. If you have a couple of sets, then you probably will have enough, because in here I have a lot of turns to shape it the right way. Next, if you follow the instructions for the short rows for the front neckline, just to finish marking the territory, the instructions for my size say that I need to turn 6 times after 1 stitch, and then 5 times every 2 stitches. So I'm not going to mark every stitch here. I'll just mark 6 stitches. This is where instructions will end, to turn every stitch. And then it's your preference whether you want to mark every 2 stitches here so you know where you're at, or I didn't mark it correctly, did I? Here we go. Or just leave it as that, and you will know that from this marker to that, it will be every 2 stitches. When you come to the double stitch and you work it, it's 2 stitches from this marker, 5 times you turn. For the sleeve shaping, the instructions for my size read that I have to turn once after 3 stitches, and then I have to turn after every 4 stitches 5 times, and then every 4 stitches 11 times. That is not a mistake, it's just easier to write the pattern like that. It's a lot of calculations, so it's easier for me to keep it like that. What I'm going to mark here is the first turn will be after 3 stitches from this stitch marker, and then I will have total of 15 turns after 4 stitches, and I will just keep marking the 4 stitches here, and I will just keep going like that, marking every turn, because it will be easier for me not to just follow it. I will mark it, and the guiding markers, the supporting markers, will let me know when to turn. So I'm gonna finish doing that, and I'll come back and show you the first round of the shaping and then a couple of short rows. I'm beginning my work to shape the sleeve and the neckline, and I started from the beginning of the row, or the beginning of the sleeve, and then I will just be working here in this area. So this first row, we knit every stitch to the stitch marker that separates neckline from the sleeve. This stitch marker. This is the most important one. The rest are just supporting stitch markers. They are important, but this is the main one. So knit every stitch, slipping markers if you place them to guide you through the short rows. Just keep working to the stitch marker, like that. Slipping stitch markers as you come to them. I've worked the first row of the sleeve, knitting every stitch, slipping the markers as I come to them, and I'm almost at the stitch marker where I will start the short row shaping of the front neckline and the sleeve. The last stitch worked before the stitch marker, slip the stitch marker, start working the short rows here. What you will do, because we're working in stockinette stitch, this wrapped stitch, I'll knit it together with the original stitch. It's not in a pattern, but I'm showing you here as a little guidance. Knit it together. I work German short rows. The description you can find in the pattern itself, and I will show you here how to work the short rows. So you knit that first stitch. This is your first turn. Turn work. We're on the wrong side, and keeping the yarn at the front, insert the right needle tip into the first stitch on the left needle purlwise, slip it onto the right needle, bring the yarn to the back of the work over the right needle, creating a double stitch. This one will be more than a double because we just worked together the stitch below and this stitch, so it'll be a little thick here, but you will be able to knit it when you come to it. So it looks a little weird, but it is a double stitch. Slip the stitch marker and work to your next marked turn, or just follow the instructions from here. That will be your sleeve turns. Follow the instructions, they're under letter C in your pattern. Purl the stitches to the stitch marker. You can keep the stitch marker here to guide you through where you have the double stitch. I will remove it because I know what double stitch looks like, feels like. I know when to work it. Okay, we are on the right side and we need to create a double stitch here. We just turned work. The next time we'll come here, we'll turn work at this stitch marker. But right now, this is our main priority. You will insert the right needle tip into the stitch. It's easier when you bring the yarn forward. I don't do it because it's faster, but if you bring the yarn forward, it's easier to just insert the needle into that stitch. Slip that stitch off of the left needle onto the right needle. Bring the working yarn over the right needle and tighten it up a bit, creating a double stitch. You can see that we're bringing the stitch below the just worked stitch and creating the double stitch. That's what it looks like. And now work to the double stitch, slipping the stitch marker. This is our first double stitch. Knit it, just both legs, knit it, and work the next stitch, meaning knit the next stitch here. There you go. Sometimes there will be a bump here. What you will do is knit, just pull up the stitch below and knit it together. You can close it actually here. Let me show you how to do that, because there's just a little bit of a gap from all of these, like the join and all of that stuff. What you do is just bring up the stitch under this stitch, the first stitch on the left needle, knit it together, and that will close that space. Now it looks much better. Just this once, the rest will be okay, but this once, because of the joins here at the neckline and the sleeve, that's what happens. Okay, this is my second turn, because I'm turning every stitch until I hit this marker. Turn work. It's a lot of stitch markers and stoppers that creating a noise, so I'm sorry about that. We're doing the same thing. Insert the needle into the stitch purlwise, slip the stitch onto the right needle, bring the yarn over the right needle, creating a double stitch, bring the yarn to the front, purl to next double stitch, and this is the double stitch. Insert the needle into the double stitch. You will have two legs at this point, purl it together, and work to your next turn. Purl all stitches here. Wherever you are, on the right side, on the wrong side. The details are in the pattern itself for the short rows, for German short rows. Just read them how to work double stitches on the right side of the work or on the wrong side of the work when you have to knit them or purl them, and then follow this video. We're creating the next double stitch. I'm just going to keep the yarn at the back of the work because that's just how I do it. It's just faster, but if you find it easier, just bring it forward. I will insert the right needle tip into the stitch purlwise, slip it, tighten it up. I don't need to have the full motion here, so it's just a quicker method, just a quicker way to create a double stitch and to work it. And then work to your next double stitch. The instructions in the pattern are very generic. I just give you turns, when to turn, and you follow either your preferred short row method or what I am showing you here, the German short row method. Work the double stitch, and then because we're at the neckline, knit the next stitch, turn work, create double stitch, slip the stitch, bring the yarn to the back of the work, tighten the stitch, bring the yarn to the front, and purl to the double stitch. You keep working like that until you have a very last turn here, until you will be here. And I will keep working and I'll come back to show you what's going to happen next when we're at this stitch marker. So this is what we have right now. As a little recap. We switched to work from reverse stockinette stitch to stockinette stitch, and we're shaping the front neckline. There it is. Slowly we're shaping it. The back neckline will be shaped. I do not just knit straight. It creates the bulk at the back. If you noticed sweaters that just gape at the back, this is why. I always build the back neckline drop, so it's slightly curved. And not just short rows going from here to here, just building that material at the back. No, it's actually going to be the same kind of little drop like that. It's just going to be much smaller than the front, because the front is 2.5, 3 inches difference from the back. But here I will shape it. It will be curved like that, just slightly. So that's what's coming next at some point. All right, I'll meet you at this stitch marker. Checking in, this is where I am. We build the top of the sleeve for the right sleeve. We're shaping the right sleeve, shoulder part, and the sleeve. At the same time, we're shaping the right front neckline curve. And I am at my last double stitch. I will work it in a second. So this, we temporarily stop work on the right sleeve. We'll come back to it and work full short rows from the right sleeve to the left, back and forth. But for now, I'll have to switch and work the left side. What I'm going to do is work the last double stitch, and at this point the work for shaping the right side of the front neckline ended. Okay, I have to knit a certain amount of stitches here. Check your pattern. It will be identified in the pattern how many. So for my size, it's 16 stitches, and then I will have more stitches left here. I will knit 16 stitches and then I'll break the yarn. Okay, so let's just do that. Right here. That's it. So break the yarn. Leave enough to weave in later. It's not going to be obvious at all that the break was there. This is how I do it, so I can then it won't be a blunt cut yarn. It's easier to weave it in if it's uneven. Okay. I'll need this yarn to cast on stitches for the left sleeve. What we need to do right now, after we broke the yarn, is slip. You might want to put actually a stitch marker here. Why don't we use this? This is where the left side curve for the front neckline will end, right here. So put the stitch marker there and slip, without working, all of the stitches from the left needle onto the right needle. Basically freeing the left needle and getting to the point where the front needle meets with the back needle. And we'll start casting on stitches for the left sleeve. Temporarily this work for the right side stopped, and we'll continue with the left side. Okay, all of the stitches transferred. So this is what we have. We're ready to cast on stitches for the left sleeve, right side, left side. So right now the work is facing you, and we need to make sure that the front needle, which is the blue one, where we just shaped the front neckline, is at the top, and the bottom one is at the bottom. The back one is at the bottom. And we need to join the yarn. I'm gonna just secure it. If you turn work to the wrong side, just secure this, the new yarn, somewhere in here, so it stays put for a period of time. Okay, something like that. That's good enough for now. We will repeat the same instructions for this side as for the right side. So for this, I will temporarily take the stopper off, and I'll place the stitch marker to mark the separation, the beginning of the sleeve. And on this side too. So both needles have the stitch markers. And I will place the stopper back on and start casting on stitches. This is the first stitch. Second stitch. I'm ready to join the left sleeve to the left neckline. 2 more stitches to knit. tighten up these stitches here. What I do now is bring the yarn to the front, remove the stitch marker, slip the stitch off of the left needle onto the right, place the stitch marker back onto the left needle, bring the yarn to the back, turn work, purl 2 stitches together, here we go, and there it is, tightened up, and purl to the end of the row, and then come back and repeat the same motion. I will do it one more time to show you how it's done. So we start connecting the top of the sleeve to the neckline. Keep repeating rows 1 and 2 and shaping the top of the sleeve. I will show you again what to do here. So we knit the last stitch before the stitch marker separating the sleeve from the neckline. We bring the yarn forward, remove the stitch marker, slip the first stitch of the left needle onto the right, place the stitch marker back, and bring the yarn to the back of the work. I did mark where I need to end. Follow the pattern, it tells you exactly where to put the stitch marker. You will remove it when these 2 stitch markers meet. Then turn work. You're on the second row, the right side of the work, and we need to purl 2 stitches together and purl to the end of the row. And you will keep repeating these 2 rows until you hit the stitch marker right here. So keep working like that. That's what we're creating. And I will come back and show you how we're gonna start shaping the front left neckline and left sleeve. So keep working. I'm at my last turn for the left sleeve, top part of the left sleeve. I will show you that maneuver one more time. And then we will start working on the seam for the front left sleeve. Knit the last stitch before the stitch marker, remove the stitch marker, slip the stitch off of the left needle tip onto the right, place the stitch marker back, move the yarn to the front. Actually, remove the supporting stitch marker, place the stitch marker back, the one that you placed originally. And now work your way back to the beginning of the row, this row. So first, purl 2 stitches, tighten it up, and then purl to the end of the row. I'm beginning to work on the seam for the left sleeve, front part of the left sleeve. All you need to do is bind off stitches to the stitch marker knitwise. Just keep binding off stitches from the beginning of the row to this stitch marker right here. And you will have 1 stitch left over here, and you will wrap that stitch around this stitch, and we will start casting on. So keep binding off stitches. I bound off almost all of the stitches of the front part of the left sleeve. This is the last one. And you should end up with 1 stitch. So remove the stitch marker, transfer this last stitch onto the left needle, and now you need to wrap this stitch around this stitch. So first stitch on the left needle wrapped around the second stitch. Place the stitch back. All of the stitches bound off. Next row, turn work. I don't need this needle for now. Place the stitch marker back and start casting on knitwise the same amount of stitches you just bound off. What it means is that you will have to insert the needle into the stitch below the bind off from the front to the back. Wrap the yarn around the needle and bring it to the front. One stitch cast on. You can use crochet hook for this if you find it easier. This is knit stitches, so it's not as hard as the purl stitches that we did on the right sleeve. So keep repeating the same motion. Insert the needle into the stitch below the bind off. Bind off, bind off stitch, stitch right under the bind off. Grab the yarn, pull it through. We're casting on stitches. Again, bind off stitch, stitch below the bind off. Grab the yarn, pull it through. And I will double check that I will cast on the same amount of stitches I just bound off. It's important. And keep doing this until the end of the row. I just picked up and cast on the amount of stitches that I bound off. This is the right side. All the knit stitches are there. This is the seam that we've created on the left side. Let me show you how it differs. No seam side, stretches widely, and you will understand that your sleeve will stretch just the same way. So seam will hold stitches together. So no matter how this might stretch, this will give it structure and will be a better hold. Next row, we will work, meaning purl, because we're switching to work to stockinette stitch from reverse stockinette stitch. We will purl to the stitch marker right here. And from this point, we'll start shaping. We'll start the short row work on the front left neckline curve and the left front sleeve. While I'm doing that, I will place the stitch markers to guide me through the short rows of the sleeve. Just follow it along, check your pattern for what it is. Sorry, I'm purling here. Okay. So start purling. Purl every stitch to the stitch marker and then follow instructions for your size on turns. I will guide you through. I will show you that in a minute. I'm almost at the point of starting working the short rows and shaping the front of the left side of the neckline and the sleeve. Did I carry it away with the stitch markers? Not at all. So here I've marked previously the end of the left side neckline curve shaping. Here I've marked every stitch, just a little bit of fun, where I need to make turns after this stitch marker. I will have to make turns every 2 stitches. And here I've marked my turns for the sleeve. Isn't that lovely? So let's start working the short rows and shaping the left front side. Finishing work, getting to the stitch marker, this. I know, it's hard to tell, but this is the stitch marker. We switch to work in stockinette stitch from reverse stockinette stitch. This is the right side of the work. So we need to purl the first stitch. I will remove this stitch marker. Turn work. Sorry about the noise in the video. All the stitch markers just create that soothing sound. Okay. To make the double stitch, I will show it to you the right way and then I'll just do it faster my way. Adjust to what you like to do, or the short row technique that you like to use. Right needle tip, insert it into the stitch purlwise on the left needle, slip that stitch, bring this working yarn from the front to the back over the right needle, tighten it up a bit, creating the double stitch right there. Slip the stitch marker, knit to the stitch marker or for the amount of stitches identified in the pattern for the first turn. Slip the stitch marker, turn work, make the double stitch, insert the right needle tip into the stitch purlwise on the left needle, slip that stitch, bring the working yarn to the back of the work, tighten it up, creating a double stitch. Bring the yarn to the front, purl to the double stitch. Slipping markers, or one marker, the most important marker at this point. That separates the front neckline from the sleeve. Double stitch right here. Get through both legs, right there, and purl it. Purl the next stitch, remove the stitch marker, turn work. Create a double stitch. I'm showing you that in a faster mode. I don't flip the yarn back and front. I just create a double stitch, tighten it up, knit, slipping the stitch marker to the next double stitch, right there. Knit that double stitch, knit to the next stitch marker. Repeat this motion until you will be done with all of the turns at the front neckline, right here, when you hit the stitch marker where you broke the yarn. That will be the end of your work. I'll keep working like that, and I will come back and show you what to do next after this. I am at the last double stitch on the left side. This is what we have so far. We built that front neckline curve on both sides. We have top of the sleeves, and we worked some of the short rows for the sleeves. There are a few short rows left, and I've marked my turns. I will switch to work when I hit the very last stitch marker. I will be a number of stitches away from the end of the row. I will switch to work reverse stockinette stitch from the stockinette stitch that I'm working now. Same will be on the other side, and I'll stop the video and I'll show you how to switch to reverse stockinette stitch from stockinette stitch. For now, let me guide you through this row. So in instructions, when you see that it tells you to work to the last double stitch at left side of the neckline, and this is it right before that stitch marker and the stitch where the yarn where we broke the yarn. So it's right here. Purl this last double stitch, remove the stitch marker, and keep purling all of the stitches until you hit the double stitch and then the next turn. So purl all of the stitches including double stitch to the next turn on the right side of the sleeve. I'm on the last turns at each sleeve, almost done with the short row work for the front part of the sweater. So there's one stitch marker left. This is the last double stitch here. So I'll work my way back here and I'll switch to work to reverse stockinette stitch from the stockinette stitch. This is the left sleeve. First, I will work the last turn at the left sleeve and then switch to the right, and that'll be my last turn. So I will Start working reverse stockinette stitch here. This is my last turn at the left sleeve. This is what I am doing. I am working the last double stitch. I am knitting it. I'm still working in stockinette stitch. I am working to the last short row turn. If you put these guiding stitch markers, remove the stitch marker, turn work. I'm on the wrong side. And knit every stitch of this row, including the double stitch at the right sleeve, and you will have the last turn. Create double stitch here. This is the last turn. And then knit every stitch, including the double stitch at the right sleeve, and then make the last turn and start working from this point in reverse stockinette stitch. I am almost at the end of the row for the right sleeve. This is my last turn, and I worked to the double stitch, knit the double stitch because we switched to work in reverse stockinette stitch, knit to your last turn for the right sleeve, remove supporting stitch marker if you place them, turn work, create your last double stitch, and purl to the end of the row. This time it will be to the end of the row, and you will purl your very last double stitch at the left sleeve. And when we come back, it will be a full, we'll start working full rows. I'm almost at the end of the row for the left sleeve. I will work my very last double stitch, and I will purl to the end of the row. This will be the beginning of my full row. On the next row, I will work the full row to the right, on the right sleeve. Right now, I will ask you in a pattern to put a stitch marker, removable stitch marker, into that last stitch. It's just easier for me to tell you when to start measuring. From this point on, when we will start working full rows, when your sleeve measures the amount of inches identified in a pattern, you will stop and break the yarn. I have finished work on the front part of the sleeves. From the stitch marker, I measured the amount of inches that I need for the sleeve width at the wrist. That's about it. I put the stoppers and switch the needle tips to the back needle instead of the front. For now, I will hold these stitches and I will do a 3 needle bind off here. I left a substantial amount of yarn for the 3 needle bind off, and I ended on the right side of the left sleeve. That was my last row here. I'm ready to transfer some of the stitches from the left sleeve onto the right. This will be the side where we have the little piece of the yarn. I have marked the neckline drop for the curve of the neckline drop stitches on the left side and on the right side. So for the next step, what we need to do is make sure that your sweater, the wrong side, faces you. Grab the needles. So this is the wrong side. This will be the right side of the sleeve. I hope you see it. in the view on your monitor. So wrong side of the sweater, the back needle is at the top of the work. This is our front. And then the working needle, right now what you need to do is, this is the left sleeve, and this is the right side of the left sleeve. All you need to do is transfer a certain amount of stitches from the left needle onto the right. We need to end up right here, one stitch away from the stitch marker. I am giving you the exact amount of stitches. I'll probably put in a pattern where to place these supporting markers. If I don't, just watch the video and place them. It's in the pattern. The stitch number is in the pattern. So right now, follow the instructions in the pattern itself on how many stitches you need to transfer from the left needle onto the right, with the wrong side of the sweater facing you and the back needle at the top, but the right side of the sweater, so because it's curved. Transfer all of the stitches for the sleeve, and then almost all of the stitches for that little back neckline drop. So we'll end up right here, and we'll join the yarn and start working on the back neckline and sleeves. So I'm going to keep doing that until I come to the stitch marker that separates the sleeve from the neckline, and I'll show you further what to do. As we keep slipping stitches, the right side of the work is turning to us. So alternatively, you could hold the sweater with the right side facing you, and then the right sleeve in your left hand, and the left sleeve in your right hand, the right sleeve in your left hand. So the main goal here is to transfer the stitches of the left sleeve onto the right needle, the end that holds the right sleeve stitches. I hope that's clear. If not, just visualize this. So this is the sweater, this is the front, left sleeve, right sleeve. All we need to do is use the end from the right sleeve, the needle from the right sleeve, and transfer all of the stitches onto that cable continuously. So that's exactly what I'm doing. So it's all going to be in one circle, and we'll start work right here. I'm not working those stitches, I'm just transferring them. And stitch markers too at the same time. All of it goes to the right needle. And that's the right amount of stitches that I transferred. I stopped one stitch away from the stitch marker, and then the flat stitches of the back neckline start, and then the curve will be right here. So we'll start work from here. I'm going to join a new yarn. And I will start knitting stitches, and I will only knit them to this stitch marker. From this point on, we will bind off stitches to the end of the very end of the row here on your right sleeve. Slipping markers, knit all of the stitches of the flat part of the neckline, of the back neckline. And we're doing all of this because we're trying to keep everything in balance with the short row work. If you don't need all of those details, just follow along. Don't try to decipher why and what. It's complex. Okay, I'm almost. I have to slip the second stitch marker, the supporting stitch marker that marks where I end my work for the back neckline drop shaping. And I will stop at this marker right here. To make sure that there won't be a big gap here, what you need to do, this is just a suggestion here in this video, is, all right, pick up the stitch below. Just get into this bump right here and knit these two stitches together. That will close that gap. Okay, remove the stitch marker and start binding off stitches purlwise all the way to the very end. You will end up with one stitch left. So binding off all of the stitches of the sleeve. The number of stitches I will give you in the pattern. It will be one less because we will end up with one stitch at the very edge of the right sleeve. So this is what we're doing. Just continue doing this. We're just creating a seam at the back of the sleeve, right sleeve. I will keep doing that, and I will meet you there when I will have one stitch left. I bound off all of the stitches of the sleeve, the right sleeve, purlwise, one stitch left. Turn work, and we'll start casting on stitches that we just bound off. Transfer this stitch to the right needle now. Now the right needle. Don't worry about this transition because this will be hidden by the trim. What we need to do now is cast on stitches. This is the right side and it's reverse stockinette stitch. We're switching to work to stockinette stitch. So we will be casting on stitches by keeping the yarn at the front of the work, inserting the needle into the stitch below the bind off right here. So if this is the bind off, this is the stitch below, it's easier to see it here on the wrong side. And then grab the yarn and pull it through to the back of the work. From the back of the work, insert the needle into the next stitch, grab the yarn from the front, bring it to the back of the work, creating a knit stitch. Keep going like that until you cast on the same amount of stitches you just bound off. Check in the pattern for the number of stitches. It's there. I need to cast on the very last stitch here. For the sleeve. So from the back of the work into this stitch. And we're done here. I'm going to place the stitch marker here, the one that separates the sleeve stitches from the neckline stitches. I've marked some of the turns here. I'll finish this a little later, but for now I'll just show you a few turns. And I also have the very last where I need to end my back neckline drop curve shaping. Follow the instructions in the pattern. These are marked as B in the pattern at the end of the pattern itself. For my size, it says that I need to turn once after one stitch and then every 2 stitches 3 times and end work here. So this is what I'm going to do. Because I'm on the wrong side and I switched from reverse stockinette stitch to stockinette stitch, I need to purl this stitch. And I just did. Turn work. This is our first turn. And then follow turns for the back neckline and the front neckline at the same time. Make the double stitch, bring the yarn forward if you're doing it the right way. I'm doing it the fast way. I've done them a million times. So insert the right needle tip into the stitch on the left needle purlwise, slip it, and then bring the yarn over the right needle to the back, tighten the stitch, slip the stitch marker, and knit to the next turn. And here I see a little gap. I want to close it a little bit more. So what I need to do is I will get to the back and I will pick any stitch from 1 or 2 rows below. This one obviously 2 rows below. And I will place it on the needle, on the left needle, and I will knit these 2 stitches together. Let me make sure that this stitch turned the right way for the knit. Here we go. And then knit 2 stitches together. What it did, it just closed that little hole there. And that's just a suggestion for anywhere you need to do that. All right, I'm at my first turn. I will remove the stitch marker. I'll turn my work. I will create the double stitch. I'm on the wrong side of the work. insert the right needle tip into the stitch on the left needle purlwise, slip it, bring the yarn over the right needle to the back of the work, tighten it up, bring the yarn to the front of the work, start purling, and purl to your next turn. The next turn, according to my size instructions, is 2 stitches away from the double stitch. Slip the stitch marker as you go. Purl this stitch. This is the double stitch. Purl it, and then purl 2 more stitches. That's what the pattern says to do for my size. Follow it for your size. Turn work. Create a double stitch. I'm doing it the fast way. I'm not showing you the right way. There you go. Done. And now work to the double stitch. Work your double stitch. And here we go. Knit it. Work to the next turn. If you have supporting stitch markers, remove it at this point. You will know when to turn. Next time, it will be right here, and this is the double stitch that you will work. Create the double stitch, and work to the next double stitch, slipping the stitch marker. My next turn is 2 stitches away from the double stitch. I will work the double stitch, and I will purl the next 2 stitches and turn. I'm 1 turn away from finishing the work for the back neckline. Turn work. You can see this beautiful back neckline drop that will let you drop this part, the flat part, a little lower so you don't have that gaping, nagging extra fabric at the back, and it will just be shaped really, really well for the back neckline. All right, creating double stitch and working to my next double stitch, slipping this stitch marker, double stitch, and next turn. I suggest you mark your turns because, see, unmarked, I know how to count, but it can easily get lost. So you can mark them as you go, but I suggest you just do it ahead of time. Just use stitch markers in abundance. So this is my next turn. And I will show you how to transition to the left side and what we're going to do there. Double stitch, work to your next double stitch, work that next double stitch, and work to your next turn. It's the same easy motion. Just keep building that fabric. And I am at my last turn. I can remove this. I don't need this stitch marker anymore. I know that I will have to just keep going and transition to the left sleeve. So after this turn, after I'll complete this, I'll temporarily stop working on the right sleeve, and I'll return back to it after I will build the left back neckline drop. Make the double stitch. This is the last double stitch at the back neckline. Work to your double stitch, work the double stitch, and work to your next turn. And this is my double stitch coming right up, right here. Knit it, and work to the next turn. From here on, it will be hard to keep track of your turns, so I suggest you do it in the beginning. Just mark all of the turns, because right now you don't know how many you did. It's easy to count, but if you do it in the beginning, it's all done for you. Okay, I am ready to work the last double stitch at the right back neckline drop and transition to this side and do the same thing here. So turn work, create a double stitch, work your way to the double stitch at the right back neckline drop, slipping the stitch marker that separates the sleeve from the neckline. Here we go. And this is my last double stitch right here. And now I will keep going to this stitch marker that separates the neckline from the left sleeve. We're working in stockinette stitch, so I am purling. I'm on the wrong side of the work. This is the right side of the work, and you can see how beautiful that back neckline drop looks, and the shoulder part. And while we at it, this doesn't stretch as much. It will give it so much structure. This, when you compare it, stretches so much, but this holds it so well. It's really great. Okay, now I will work to the stitch marker. And we'll do the same thing. We'll cast off, we'll bind off stitches, then we'll cast on stitches. We'll build the same way, only on the other side. We'll build the back neckline drop, and we'll shape the shoulder part of the sleeve. Almost there. This is where we join the yarn. Hold that little piece, and we can tighten it later anyway, but for now, not to create a very loose stitch. Here we go. All right, I'm at the stitch marker. Remove it. To close this gap a little bit, you can just knit these two stitches together. For now, it doesn't seem to be a problem, and I have a little loose end here that I can then just fix this if there will be a hole. But I will definitely pick up a stitch from here later when I will be casting on stitches to bring this closer. What we're going to do right now is bind off all of the stitches of the sleeve knitwise, and we will be left with one stitch, just like on the other sleeve. All right, start binding off. There we go. And when I come back, I will show you the very last stitch there and how to start casting on stitches for the left sleeve. I just bound off all of the stitches but one for the left sleeve, and I will start casting on stitches. Slip the stitch onto the right needle from the left. The left still holds the back neckline stitches, and I'm going to use it for now. Now we have to cast on the same amount of stitches we bound off. Check in a pattern for your size how many stitches that is. And we are switching to work in stockinette stitch from reverse stockinette stitch, meaning we will be inserting the needle from the front of the work to the back. The working yarn is at the back of the work, grabbing the yarn and bringing it forward to the front of the work. Insert the needle into the next stitch, grab the yarn from the back, bring it to the front, and just keep going like that. I will show you a few more stitches. It's every stitch under the bind off, so we create this beautiful seam that will hold the sleeve and give it structure. Here we go. And cast on until you will meet the stitches at the neckline, and we will place the stitch marker back to separate the work. And we'll start shaping the left back neckline drop and the left sleeve. And I'll come back. I need to cast on the last stitch for the sleeve, and that will be it. And I am going to place the stitch marker and start work on the back neckline drop. What I need to do here is actually I'm going to position the stitch the right way, pull the stitch up from below. I just grabbed it from 2 rows below to close the gap, and I will knit those 2 stitches. That closes the gap, and I will do the same thing here to close this little hole. And now I need to turn. There will be 3 more turns here, here, and here. The same as for the right side, turn work. We just end up having short rows and double stitches on the opposite side of work. Create a double stitch, wrap the yarn around. It's a little bulky here because I decided to knit 2 stitches now instead of earlier. So do it earlier, you won't have that little bulk. It's not going to create a problem, it's just going to be bulky here right now. So what do I want to do here? I will tighten this up, this will close the gap, this will be fine. Work to your next turn. I didn't mark it here, which was a big mistake. I suggest you mark it. Let me actually mark the next turn. For now, it will be 4 stitches away for my size. And as I switch work and filming, then I will just keep marking. I will mark the rest of it and I will keep working. Create a double stitch. Knit the stitches. We're on the right side of the work. We switch to work from a reverse stockinette stitch to stockinette stitch. This is the double stitch, that bulky one. And see, it's totally fine. Work to your next turn. It's 2 stitches away. Turn work. Work to your next turn, working the double stitch. Remove the stitch marker. Let me mark a few more stitches here. One more turn. 2, 3, 4. Turn work. Create a double stitch. Work to the double stitch, work the double stitch, slipping markers as you go, or 1 marker, and work to your next turn. Double stitch. The next turn is 2 stitches away. There you go. Turn work. Work to your next turn. Slipping markers, working double stitches. Same thing, just practice your short rows. This is a lot of short rows, but it gives you a really good shape and very good structure. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay. Keep on working. I'll show you. I will speed this up and I will show you how to transition working from sleeve to sleeve. Last turn. The yarn we connected here at this last turn. When we turn, because of that last stitch there, it will create a beautiful transition from the short rows to the normal work. It's really just invisible. This is the best way that I found. Work to your next turn at the left sleeve and start working from the left sleeve to the right sleeve short rows until you will be at the very last turn for your right sleeve and left sleeve, and we'll switch to work reverse stockinette stitch. So right now this is what's happening. You have the last double stitch right here, and you will start working full short rows from the left sleeve to the right sleeve. This is the next turn point marked right here. I will mark the rest of them, but you will go through this double stitch here at the neckline, and then this double stitch at the sleeve, and just keep working from right to left, left to right. And I will come back and show you more when we will be ready to switch to reverse stockinette stitch. Right now, just keep on building that material and follow the short row instructions from sleeve to sleeve. Here's where I'm at. This is the front. This is the back of the sweater, shaping nicely. We've shaped the back neckline drop and the front neckline curve. And I've shaped the sleeves, the back of the sleeves. Where I'm at is at the point where I need to switch to work in reverse stockinette stitch from stockinette stitch. How do you know that? So this is the right sleeve. This is my front. So right sleeve, left sleeve. I will be on my last turn at the right sleeve and the last turn on my left sleeve. Check the instructions in the pattern. As I get to that last turn, this is my last double stitch. Not last, this will be the last. This is the last double stitch before the last turn when we switch to work in reverse stockinette stitch. So what I do is I get to my turn, remove the stitch marker, I turn work, create a double stitch, and instead of purling, I will knit to the next turn, or to the last turn at my left sleeve. So we're switching to work in reverse stockinette stitch again. I will work to the end of the row, and I will come back and show you how I switch here to reverse stockinette stitch, and then we'll work full rows for check the pattern for how long. We'll do the same thing. We'll place the stitch marker and we'll keep going. I am finishing up, getting closer to the last turn at my on my left sleeve side, left sleeve. This is my last double stitch before my last turn. Taking the stitch marker off, turning work, creating a double stitch, last turn, left sleeve, right side, and purl. Purl the way you purl. This is the way I do it because it's faster. And this will be my first full row on the right sleeve, because I will purl to the very end there, where I will place the stitch marker, and just like I did here, and then I will knit a certain depth of the sleeve. Check the pattern for what it should be, and all you have to do is make sure that you end work here on the right side, on the opposite side, because the thread is coming from the left side for the 3 needle bind off. You will need the other piece of yarn on the right sleeve. I will remind you and guide you through that process. So I will knit all the way, I will purl all the way back, and I will show you how I work the end of the row on the right side, on the right sleeve in a minute. Of the left sleeve row, the last double stitch that I am going to purl, and then I will purl to the very end of the row. So we switched to work in reverse stockinette stitch, and now the only thing that will be left, the sleeves. Not the only thing, but before we join this side with this side, we need to build up fabric. From this point on, so let me insert removable stitch marker into this very first stitch to remind me where to measure it from. So we will measure it from here. If you fold it, if you match this pattern to this pattern, this is how much we need to work straight in reverse stockinette stitch. This is the front, this is the back, but because this is the wrong side, this is the right side, that's what I meant. But I will work, this will be my first full row, and I will work the last double stitch at the right sleeve. I'm not going to show you that, but I will show you when I come back, and I will have the same depth of the material build up from this stitch marker as I had here for the front. So if you fold it, you can just see that you can just measure based on the fabric that you already worked for the front sleeve. Keep on working, building up the material. All you need to know is the yarn has to be here at the left sleeve. So if your other piece of yarn is at the right sleeve there, this is your left sleeve, and this yarn has to be here. You should end work here. We're about to do the 3 needle bind off to create seams at the sleeves. I will show you that I still have the stitch markers. I don't need them at this point, the ones that separated the neckline from the sleeves, but I kept them just in case for the stitch count, because these are the original ones and you can count from them to them. What I did and what is written in the pattern for the sleeve, this is the wrong side of the sleeve, wrist. This is, I've marked where is my last stitch to be bound off, is at the sleeve, on the one side of the sleeve and the other. So when you fold the sleeve, the stitch markers will meet and you will have live stitches aligned, and you know when to stop. I will show you the 3 needle bind off for one sleeve only, and you will repeat these instructions for the second one. What is important here is that keep in mind that you can increase the body width, and that will decrease the length of the sleeve. So either or, whether you prefer maybe slimmer fit, then just go, you will need to increase or decrease this amount of stitches by four stitches total. So if you want narrow body, at each sleeve, go 4 stitches towards the body. Just move that marker and bind off more stitches for the sleeve, leaving less stitches for the body, and vice versa. Do it for the second sleeve the same way. I have marked in the pattern to break the yarn for the left sleeve for the 3 needle bind off, but it happens that I had a little bit of yarn left for the right and I had a decent amount left for the left. It does not matter where you will begin your round when you start working in a round. Where the either the left side or the right side. What I mean here is where you have the little bit of yarn left to do the 3 needle bind off, just leave it be. And when you have a little bit more yarn left, that'll be the beginning of your round, that side. I hope that's clear, but I'll show you in a minute. It will be clear. I will show you the beginning of the 3 needle bind off, and then I will show you how to handle the very last stitch from the bind off. And you will repeat the same instructions for the other side. So this is the right side of the sweater. Turn your sleeve to the wrong side and fold it in half. Remove at this point all of the unnecessary stitch markers. This one, just let me know how much I need to work in reverse stockinette stitch to match the other side. So I don't need this one anymore. And you can also remove your neckline to sleeve separation markers. You will need a third needle, just the tip of the needle. You don't need a needle. Fold your sleeve in half with the wrong side on the outside, right side inside. And align the needle so the live stitches of left side of the sleeve will align with the right stitches of the right side of the sleeve. And from here on, we will be knitting 2 stitches together, 1 stitch from this needle, the other stitch from that needle. You can do it all in one movement. Insert the tip of your needle into the stitch, the first stitch on the front needle, and then on the first stitch of the back needle. Knitwise and knit 2 together. Slip both stitches off of the needles, creating the first stitch. Then insert the needle, just repeat the same thing. Insert the needle into the first stitch, insert the needle into the first stitch of the back needle, knit 2 together. You have 2 stitches here, slip the second stitch on the right needle over the first stitch. And from now on, you will be repeating the same thing. So insert the right needle tip into the first stitch on the front needle knitwise. Insert the right tip needle into the first stitch on the back needle. Knit 2 together, slip both stitches off. Slip the second stitch, counting from the tip of the needle on the right needle over the first. And keep working like that. What you can do if this maneuver by picking up stitches simultaneously on both needles doesn't work for you, slip the first stitch off of the front needle, place it on the back needle, knit 2 stitches together. There's 2 stitches right there. 1, 2. Knit it together, slip it off the needle. And do the same thing, slip the second stitch on the right needle over the first. Keep going like that until you reach the stitch markers. And then I will show you what to do with the very last stitch. I will continue working like that till I reach my stitch markers. I'm at the markers where I need to end my 3 needle bind off work. 2 last stitches. And what do you do now with this 1 last stitch left? Remove the stitch markers. And now slip this stitch. Wow, isn't that great? I have just enough yarn, like really, barely just enough yarn. Slip the stitch off the right needle onto the front left needle and slip this first stitch over the second stitch on the left needle. Like that. Place the stitch back on the left needle. That's the end of it. And then when I will come back, I will show you how to begin work in the round, because there will be a little gap here. I will guide you through how to close those stitches. I already showed you my little trick on how to do it at the neckline, but I'll repeat it here. Repeat the same instructions for the left sleeve. And again, it doesn't matter where you start the round. This is my right sleeve. Obviously, I didn't have enough yarn, so I will start the round at the left sleeve where I have more yarn left over. Before I invert the sleeve on to the right side, inside out, outside in, I will show you this. So these are the seams that we've created at the top of the sleeve on the wrong side. If this stretches, this one will hold it. So we actually have 3 seams in one circumference of the sleeve. This is the wrong side of the sleeve. And if I'll turn it right side in, then you will see that beautiful seam that we've just created right here that connects the sleeve. And this is the sleeve joined. All that's left to do here is to cast stitches on for the trim and create a trim. But that will be the last step. First, I'll show you how to join working around, and that'll be a breeze, just working down to the bottom. And at that point, you can increase it in length, decrease the length of the sweater. But this is what we have right now. Right there. So repeat the same instructions for the other sleeve. I am ready to start working around. I've created seams at the sleeves and joined them. This is my right sleeve where I had a little piece of yarn left. And because of that, I will start the round at the left sleeve. It doesn't matter where you started, really. So this is the finished seam for the left sleeve. Front, back. And we're ready to start working in the round. To do that, this is my working yarn. And because we slipped that last stitch, we ended on in the right position to start the round. I'm ready to work the first round for the body of the sweater. What I will do is, this is the cable that I will use because it's shorter, and the front of the body stitches are on my extra cable with the stopper on. Let me put it in there so it doesn't create the noise. I'll switch to a different background at some point, so there will be less noise. All right, working yarn. For now, I do have a stitch marker ready for the beginning of the round. I don't need it yet, but when I'll get to this stitch, then I will need it. What you need to do here is need to close this space, because in this design, I do not have the flat part where I bind off stitches with the bound off stitches to create a little flat part under your arm. So what I will do is, this is just a drastic, really hard join. What I will do is turn it to the back, and I will have to pick up a stitch from somewhere from the 1 or 2 rounds below, or rows at that point. And what's going to happen is maybe even from here, this would be a good one. So it's the stitch from the join. This, place it on the left needle, and we're still working in reverse stockinette stitch. I need to make sure, because my stitches are turned the way I purl, so let me position this stitch the right way, with the right leg in the front of, at the front of the needle, and the back leg at the back. And I will purl these 2 stitches together, closing that space. That will be the first one. Then I will purl to the end of this row, or for the back of the sweater, because I'm starting my round at the left sleeve. So I'm working the back first. You can, at this point, remove these stitch markers. They're not going to help you anymore. We're at the join of the 2 needles. And I am going to join the work from the back to the front on the right side. This last stitch, what do I do with it? Again, this is a little bit of elongated stitch. So there's a seam here. Pick up, well, really any little piece of yarn from there, and purl 2 together. Tighten it up a bit. That closes that whole space and creates the smooth transition. And we will do the same thing with the first stitch on this needle. So now I freed that end of the needle, and I will work all of the stitches on this needle into the needle with the red cable. And I'll continue working with that needle until the bottom trim. Okay, you don't need a stitch marker here unless you really want to. You can place one here to mark the middle of the work for the body. And we're doing the same thing here. I'm going to make sure that my stitch is positioned properly. And I will pick up any stitch from this row or the row below, from the seam. This one is very tight, so it'll be a good connection there. And purl these 2 stitches together. The stitch from the seam and what used to be the first stitch on the left needle. And tighten it up. This will smooth out. If there will still be a gap, just pick up from this stitch on the next round to connect it. So probably this one, that little bump, just purl these 2 together too. And keep working to the end of the round. Okay, the last stitch here. Doing the same thing. Wrong side. Pick up a stitch, very tight stitch, but pick up a stitch from the seam and purl 2 together. Okay, this creates a gap, so let's undo this. Let's do this one first. I don't like this, so pick up the stitch under the next stitch on the left needle, purl 2 together through back loop. And now pick up that stitch. Doesn't really matter if you put it before or after this stitch. So pick up the stitch from the seam and purl 2 together. That created a better join right there. Set this needle aside. We have the first round. Place the stitch marker on the right needle and start working in the round, purling all of the stitches. Check your pattern for the depth of the work in reverse stockinette stitch, and then switch to work in stockinette stitch. And decide where you want to elongate the body for how, just see what that depth is. Try the sweater on, see what you like and what you don't like. I have finished the trim for the bottom. I'm working on in the round on the body of the Avaris. This is what the front looks like with the shaping at the neckline, dipper. Then the back. The back is just a slight shaping, but this is very important because when you do not have this little drop at the neckline, you notice that some sweaters have that extra buildup and they're just gaping at the back. So this one will not have it. It will lay straight across your back absolutely perfectly. And the sleeves are finished. We used a 3 needle bind off for the seams. We connected them to the body with a wicked way of picking up stitches from the bottom. So that's what it looks like. And this one is unique because it's just flat. There's no extra flat material at the underarm, but it's okay. Actually, it works in this specific design. In my future designs, you will see that belt. And I used 4x4. I decided to go with 4x4. If check your pattern. In the pattern, there's a variation to the original design had a garter stitch. So you can work it in garter stitch. Just make sure you follow the direction and switch from larger size needles that the body is worked to smaller size needles that the trim is always worked. What's left to do is sleeve trim. What I'm going to do is cast on stitches, pick up and cast on stitches, and I will work, I will use magic loop to work both sleeves at the same time. I will show you how I do it. For this you will need about 47 inches cable with the smaller size needle tips. Check your pattern for what it is. And the way I do it, both sleeves will be in the same direction, and I'll work them like that. This is the 3 needle bind off. Face it to the right and the top of the sleeve to the left. Same thing here. The 3 needle bind off, face it to the right in the same direction. This is where I will start my row because I do not use stitch markers for the sleeves unless I have to for the pattern. But usually I know where my row begins. It's at the seam. And I will join a new yarn. And I need to pick up stitches along the edge evenly. I am not going to tell you how many stitches to just try to do it evenly. This is one of those times where you just have to pick up stitches, and I'm not going to tell you pick up every stitch and then skip one. Sometimes it's hard with these little inserts. Just try to do it as evenly as you can. So let me zoom in and I'll show you. Okay, pick up and cast on round. Pick up, cast on. We're picking up stitches and casting them on, I guess. So just insert the needle. You can give it some extra fabric. This is how I do it. Insert the needle into the stitch below the edge with the yarn at the back and bring it to the front. All of the stitches that I will cast on will be knit stitches. So this is, I will continue with that. I know that pretty much like halfway through I need to have a certain amount of stitches. So this is what I'm gonna gauge at. 2, something like that. Pretty much evenly. I need 10 more here. So half of the sleeve stitches are cast on. For the magic loop method, I will continue with the second sleeve for the half length of the sleeve. I will need to join a second yarn, a new skein of yarn, and I will cast on the same amount of stitches as for the first sleeve. So just keep going, casting on. I don't like this, so better. Same amount of stitches cast on for the second sleeve. Now slide the cable through, turn work, and with the same needle, leaving a length of the cable to your right, cast the same amount of stitches you just cast on there. We don't do any decreases here, so it will be just straight work in 4x4 rib. of the stitches cast on for the second sleeve. Now to the first one. Still the same needle tip. Done. Okay, so now you have 2 cables, stitches aligned and divided in half for both sleeves. Turn work and start setting the pattern for the sleeves. So the first row, pretty much always, you can work in pattern, but picking up stitches, usually just knit stitches. So create that magic loop by dragging the second needle or the back needle, still leaving some cable at the left and having extra cable at the right, and the 2 working needles at the front. The way we set up the pattern is I want to be very symmetrical. I want to be symmetrical. So to keep the symmetry, first knit 2 stitches, purl 4, knit 4, purl 4, and you will end up with 2 knit stitches on that side to finish the round. And let's repeat that for the second sleeve. We will tighten it later, it's okay. And we'll keep setting the pattern. I will show you just a few rows, and then I'll come back and show you the final sweater. I will bind off stitches. Use your preferred bind off method. I will at some point record the way I bind off pretty much all of the edge stitches. Okay, so the first half of the rounds for both sleeves, I've set the pattern. Now turn work. Slide the front needle to the beginning of the work. Create that loop of the cable on your left side and on your right side, and continue with the pattern. So because we worked 2 stitches here, purl stitches, we'll continue with 2 purl. Just keep it in pattern. Tighten it up a bit so you don't create that gap here. That's the most important part here, just to tighten the stitches up in the beginning. Otherwise they will be loose and it will show up in the pattern later. And 2 last stitches, knit. So that's the first round with the pattern for the second sleeve. Leave the yarn over the needle because of the purl stitch so we can start working on that side. Tuck it inside the end. And let's finish the second or the first sleeve. And again, we need 2 purl stitches here to finish the pattern. Tighten it up. And then continue with the pattern. And the first round finished for both sleeves. So align your needles. You can do it at the end of the row or beginning of the row, but sometimes you want to see what it looks like being more stable on the needle tips. So this is what we have. Turn work. Just tuck that end in for now, and then you will weave it in. And let's continue the second round, and we'll keep going like that. So we're creating that loop, a little bit of the cable left on the left side and some cable on the right side, just to give you some room to maneuver the needles. And keep working in pattern. That's all there is to it. Very easy. 2 sleeves, 2 socks, 2 mittens at a time. That's the way I prefer to do it. When I work my sleeves top down, not in this manner. This is just a different approach. But I'll show you in the future how to knit both sleeves at the same time. If you're working with the yoke sweaters, raglan sweaters, anything else but this design. There you go. The pattern is being set. And a few more rounds of the trim. And then I will show you the final product. The final sweater. Avaris, this will be my last test. There's so many variations of it that I go through when I design. See? Okay. Turn work. Yarn over the needle with purl stitches because we need it to be at the top of the cable or the needle when we turn work. Turn work. Slide the front needle tip to begin work. There it is. That's your magic loop. You can straighten up this material while you have the cable to make sure there's no gap here. If you have 2 needles, straight needles, it's harder to do. But with the cable, you can straighten up this part of the fabric and make sure the stitches are tight here at the joint. And just keep working like that in that set pattern. What I'm checking is, and what to look out for, when I cast on stitches, it happens that it just happened to be symmetrical. But see, the 4 stitches, purl stitches, end up at the split of the reverse stockinette stitch and the stockinette stitch. And the same thing here. The 4 purl stitches end up at the same point. So that worked out, but just make sure you watch out for those kind of things when you cast on stitches. So try to do it as evenly as possible. It's okay, you will not notice it later, probably. Hopefully you don't have OCD and so at the beginning of the next round, and I'll keep working like that in using magic loop method until I'm done with all of the rounds. And check your pattern, or decide maybe you want the trim to be a little longer, longer sleeves, maybe shorter sleeves and shorter trim. It's up to you. This is such a good pattern to change it to your liking. So this is it. The sleeves are all finished. I decided to go shorter with the trim, and they're not blocked. I actually wet blocked the sweater itself to see where the sleeves will end up because they stretch a little bit, but the seam here keeps it right there. When we created all three seams of the sleeves, keep it pretty sturdy. So there it is. It doesn't stretch too much. This part will a little bit, but it's still pretty good structure. So there it is.